Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have another sharp game to share with you. This was played at the 2024 Tata Steel Masters on the white end Gukesh D, playing against Ding Liren. Let's have a look. On board, an Italian game. Knight f6, targets e4, and it's defended directly with d3. If white defends with the queen knight, this invites a sacrifice on e4, followed up with this familiar center fork trick. After the smoke clears on this variation, black has been successful in what way? Well, white no longer has a pawn positioned in the center. It's known as an even position. In this one, simply d3. And now bishop c5, noted as the Giuoco Piano. Play has a tendency to develop slowly. c3, met with d6, a4, a5. Black doesn't want to see white expand further on the queen side. No b4 now, no a5. Now, if white knows a4 can simply be met with a5, why play a4 at all? Well, by provoking a5, white has gained a little something, has softened up a square or two in black's camp, this here being the main one, b5. A square that is no longer as easily under control by a black pawn. It is not yet a hole. Black can still move the knight, and c6 is right around the corner. But in short, b5 is a bit more sensitive now. The queen knight is going to drift towards this b5 square, a post that is all the more attractive because it strikes black's bishop. We continue with bishop g5. There is a pin black needs to sort out. A good first step is to question that pinning piece, h6 on board. And of course, at this level, we're not going to see an extremely valuable bishop exchange itself for a knight and help black develop in the process. So the pin is maintained. Why is the bishop worse off on h4 rather than g5? Here's how I like to view it. From h4, it is now a kingside specific piece. It is now all in on the pin. For as long as it's on g5, it retains the possibility to drift back towards the queenside and maybe defend an important dark square or two. No longer possible from the h4 post. From here, we have bishop a7. Notice, black is not following up with g5 just yet, at least. That is an extremely committal move. Very weakening. 4 holes are created with just that one move. But at least black is now just one move away from breaking the pin. Bishop a7 in this game. Black is staying clear of d4 with tempo. Now, a question I had for myself, this bishop has two options. He could go to b6 or a7, both get out of the way of d4. And as I saw the game develop here, this knight getting into b5, I thought to myself, if we know this knight is going to go into b5, wouldn't it be better to go to b6 instead? That way, if the knight gets into b5, it's not bothering the bishop. Here's the thing. Whether the bishop is on b6 or a7, this knight can still be a bug, one way or the other. So if the bishop is on b6, the knight can get into c4. Bishop is bothered. If the bishop is on a7, it gets into b5. Yet again, the bishop is bothered. One other piece of criteria to factor in here. The knight getting to c4 costs an additional tempo. But do know, when you compare the c4 and b5 squares, a knight from c4 is more central. There is value there. So, in this game, bishop a7 it is, knight a3, queen e7, knight b5, bishop b6. Not as central from b5. Queen b3. Another note about these a-pawn advances shows up, or at least did to me when I saw queen b3 here. If there isn't a black pawn on a5, queen b3, this battery would not be a good idea, because knight a5 would be there, hunting the light square bishop. From here, we have g5. Black, notice, does not castle right now. He wants to know, are you going to maybe sacrifice on g5 before you make this commitment to put the king on the king's side? Let's see if white's going to go in for some piece sacrifice. This is something you always have to be mindful of. White's reply is bishop g3 here. The sacrifice on g5 is not working, and I'll give you two reasons why. The first is a very forceful continuation, and that is this sacrifice on f2 followed up with knight g4 check. Now, I just want you to know that this is still pretty messy. It's completely winning in the computer's eyes, but you do have to, I guess, do your homework. You have to have answers to what are you doing after rook here, h3, knight takes rook. All right, it's winning in the computer's eyes, but again, a sharp position still. Both kings are kind of running for their lives. All right, if you don't want to do your homework, and I imagine many of you are in that camp, here's another approach you can take. Bit more calm, doesn't go in for this sacrifice. You could simply develop bishop e6, trade bishops, continue to castle, and I realize this is taking many moves, but finally, here's how you're getting yourself out of the pin. Rook g6 defends the knight, and now you're ready to finally get out of the line of fire. Again, takes many moves, but at the end of the day, black is up that minor piece. All right, in this game, bishop g3. Now we have castles, and the reply is queenside castles. So play certainly going to sharpen opposite sides' castles. If white instead plays h4, the reply would be g4, ensuring a file is not opened up directly towards the black king. Queenside castles in this game, knight h5 follows. And here we go, play in the center, d4 is sacrificing a pawn. White knows that e4 is vulnerable. After this capture, there are queen takes e4 moves. How does black reply? Well, he starts with the capture on d4. And the reply is knight b takes d4. And now the follow-up, g4. g4 is going to create some concession by white. Black will be able to create some inroads, let's say, into white's camp. By playing g4, first of all, what are white's options? White can move the knight right away, go to h4, that's the move played in the game. Or white can first take on c6 and then post up in the center. Now, if you take in this way, if white first takes on this c6 square like this, what's happening? Well, a new file has been opened up. White has this half-open b file to work with towards the white king. So white doesn't do that. Instead, he plays knight h4. But now we have the follow-up bishop takes knight. This is an excellent follow-up. Why is bishop takes so good? Well, check this out. After the recapture, c takes on d4. Remember earlier, I was drawing a lot of attention to b5 being a square that black can not as easily control. And I went one step further. I said it's not yet a hole. Well, check out the corresponding square now, b4. That is a hole. And white already has a pawn here controlling it. A knight on b4 in this game, combined with one other piece, is going to be a great problem for Team White. So this is the big reason why we have bishop takes on d4, and this is why black is keeping around this knight. It has a monster square now on b4. Play follows with queen takes e4. Rook on h to e1. The last piece is now involved. And black only has one move. The queen is in the center, but guess what? She only has one safe square. And that is to go all the way back. The evaluation here is around even. And with white's next move, it starts to tip slightly in black's favor. The move in the game is rook d2. That move is played anticipating, in part, knight b4. A rook on d2 watches over these two important squares, the two squares that black intersects on. Additionally, a rook on d2 is shielding the king in a way. We're eventually going to have this queen get to g5, and when she's on g5, it will not be hitting with check when the rook is on d2. What does the computer suggest as best here? I want to put on a few moves here. This is considered one of the best lines to immediately play bishop d3. Doesn't have many options. Queen has to go here. And the follow-up, in the computer's eyes, says knight g6. Okay, you really have to do your homework here. You have to calculate very accurately. There is a pin. Can't take the knight. But you also have to have answers to these questions. What are you doing as white after knight takes pawn? There is a path, queen d5, maintaining the pin and also targeting the knight. At the end of the day, the computer says a position like this is even. Imbalance, knight and two pawns for the rook. Okay. Not a direction we go in. Instead, it is rook d2, follow up bishop d7. Now comes bishop d3 and queen g7. It's the only move. If she went in the corner, that would be running into knight g6. That variation is much more clear. White would be winning material, landing a fork. So, queen g7, bishop f5. Also, in this position, if the knight tries knight g6, it's no problem. This attack against the rook has a convenient reply. You just get to the open file, and there isn't a good follow-up here for white. So, in this game, bishop f5, bishop takes, bishop follows, knight takes, queen g5, not with check. The knight is under fire, though. Queen b5 follows. From here, contest the open file, and we continue with rook to e3. Now, something interesting about this game, the last 14 moves by black, unfortunately for Gukesh, Ding Liren is playing like stockfish. The absolute top line in each case. Now, it's true, many of the moves are forcing moves, but for the remainder of this game, Gukesh might as well be playing against stockfish. So let's see this impeccable play from here. We have not knight takes bishop, but instead a fianchettoed knight. This guy is the more dangerous minor piece. The dark square bishop, although there are weaknesses in black's camp, the dark squares h6 and f6, this guy can't really take advantage of those points. It's under control pretty well by the d6 and c7 structure. So the knight is challenged. We get a knight exchange, and now the follow-up d5. Black takes on e3 first. There is, you may think, a potential problem there on e8. So for instance, instead of d5, if white first takes here and then plays this move, is black going to lose a rook? No. It's because black can first insert a check and then another check and continue an attack against the white king with these three pieces swirling around. Okay. In this game, d5 on move 26, rook takes rook, pawn takes rook, and now knight b4, sure enough. Not easily kicked away. I mean, the only piece that can try and take the knight is this bishop, but he's a long ways away. We follow with queen b7, rook e8, bishop f4 defends e3, but now here we see the queen and the knight working together on these light squares. White withdraws the queen, at least cutting out a knight d3 move, forking the king and bishop. But now we have knight a2, check, only reply, queen b1, check, only reply, queen g1, threatening, a mate in one, knight c1 is game over. The king runs towards the center, another check, king d4, queen e1. Where do you go with the rook? Don't have many options. Rook d3. Doesn't even want the rook. He's going in for more. Queen e2, rook c3, a check, king c4, and after rook e4, white goes no further, throws in the towel. If play continued from here, this is the only move. Black could continue with queen d1 check. And what do you do here? Block with the rook. We take a rook. You're up a rook. King here, rook there, rook here. It's a mating attack. The other option would lead to mate straight away. Check, king here, in other words. It's a mate in 2. Corner pocket, and mate on a2. So that finish, those last 14 moves were, again, as if Gukesh was playing against an engine. So the bishop turned out to be, in this one, the dark square bishop wasn't really an effective piece. And we see this knight and queen really paved the way for this mating attack, forcing the king out in the center like this. What did you think of this one? Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.